Hi everyone, welcome back to the Car Chat podcast. And with me today, I have Philip White, or Pip as I call him, as I've known him for a while. Hi Pip.
Hello, how are you?
Good. We're sitting currently in a lovely lounge in Bicester Heritage.
We are indeed. So welcome to our club room.
Oh yeah, oh okay, right. So there's the club.
There is, quietly there's a club where we're working out how we can form this a little bit more.
Does it have a name?
It does, yeah, 1771.
1771.
So we're for the listeners who don't know about Bicester Heritage, we're sitting on an old RAF Bomber station, a pre-war 1926 RAF Bomber station. And in the day, the RAF had their 1771 club, which was quite progressive for the period. So it was all sexes, all ranks,
yeah,
and anyone could join. And it was in true British form. It was a tombola club. They had 2 bars. They had a couple of pool tables, and it was for the old RAF crew based here to go and have a bit of a knees up.
So you've revived it.
We've reinstated 1771.
Right.
And this is the start.
This is the start. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. And can you explain sort of like who you are? who you are? Why are we here? Like, what do you do?
So what do I do? Well, I'm the business development and marketing manager for Bicester Heritage, which now encompasses a new part of the company, Bicester Motion. So we've just launched Bicester Motion, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in due course. But Heritage is the UK's first business campus for classic car specialists,
right?
Which is pretty cool. We've been working away, beavering away on this for the last 6 years.
Well, how long you've been involved?
Almost from the start.
Pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, since the early days. So that's over 5 years now, which has been cool. We've done a lot in 5 years, but essentially it's a business campus. It's a good-looking business campus on this old RAF base. And 6 years ago, we came here and it was totally derelict, burnt out, graffitied. Local kids had shot holes in walls with pellet guns and all sorts of things. It was in a pretty...
How long was it left empty for?
Best part of 40 years. So
just this massive site, just completely empty?
Huge site. So when we got the keys, we walked into 348 acres of amazing, the best preserved pre-war bomber station to survive in the country. And it's beautiful, even in its kind of totally decrepit, leaky, windy and damp state. It was like walking into a time warp location. It's as you know, and for those that have been here, it's cinematic. It's like walking into the 20s.
It is a really cool spot. Like anyone that's come along, and we'll definitely get to this, like you host multiple events and it's totally different to your generic car park meetup.
Whole other level.
Completely different ballgame.
So we got going here. We had a plan from the start to create this business campus, but also to create a focal point for the industry. So in the classic car world, these businesses tended to be spread out, farmyards, industrial parks, that sort of thing, and generally kind of quite hard to find.
Yeah, they're always impossible to find.
No decent websites, very little social media, that kind of thing. And it makes it even harder, particularly if you're coming into this world, you haven't owned an old car before. And you're a good example of this. You kind of started off in modern cars and you're on the slippery slope. You're heading towards, you've been a pre-war car before you know it. But for those coming into this world, if you haven't kind of got experience in it, or if you haven't been born into it, it's really hard to know where these specialists are. And so by grouping them, curating a site where you can bring in these like-minded, incredibly knowledgeable businesses, it creates this environment where not only do the businesses thrive, and like any tech park or industrial park does, but for the customer like us, it creates this cool space where you can hang out and go to events and see this amazing site. Even if you're not into cars, it's a cool place to come and have a look. But it's effectively a classic car country club for the rest of us, and that sounds exclusive. It's not. It's the opposite. We're very
anyone
inclusive.
can come. Okay, there is a gate, but that's for security,
yeah.
And you can just come and have a look around. Tons of dealerships and all sorts of many small businesses of all sorts of sites.
Yeah, so I think we're now at 41
41.
41. So quite a breadth of knowledge and specialism. Everything from classic tyre specialists through to upholsterers. You can have a full exhaust system made on site. You can have your race car prepped. You can buy cars, sell cars, store cars. It's totally focused.
You can go gliding.
Yeah, you can go gliding. Absolutely. So, well, that's a major part of our history. So this site is an old airfield. Fundamentally, this is all about aviation in the Second World War. And so the airfield's still active. It's just under 200 acres of grass airfield. And we've got a gliding club based here. They've been here for a while. And we've got a lot of vintage aircraft as well, like Tiger Moths, the odd warbird flying in and out, the odd bomber. This was a bomber station initially. So
people still fly bombers around?
There's a few. Yeah. So there's the Battle of Britain Memorial flight.
Okay.
If you go down to Goodwood Revival or Silverstone Classic and kind of big motorsport events, then usually you'll get buzzed by a bomber or a Spitfire, and those are the guys.
And do people base their planes here?
Yeah.
So they're in some hangar somewhere?
Yeah. So you can come and have a vintage Tiger Moth experience here if you want. If you fancy doing a barrel roll in an open cockpit.
With some canvas on your wings.
Exactly, canvas on the wings. No parachute. You're strapped into this thing and you'll find yourself upside down quite quickly. That's exciting.
Sounds quite good fun. I think the first time I came here, it was a long time ago. I don't know how long you'd been running for, but it was definitely... So you say you opened 5 years ago.
Yeah,
feels like so much longer than that.
6 years ago, we got the keys to the site. I say the keys because we were given a bucket of keys. None of them worked. We had to completely start again. But it was 6 years ago. So we've restored the buildings, and in that time, through 4 phases of restoration, we've taken these beautiful pre-war buildings and created modern commercial units out of them. But we haven't lost any of the character. And you've seen the businesses based here and wandered around the site on events, and you can still see where camouflage is painted onto walls, and there's little stenciled writing over the top of doors saying boiler house or engine fitting shop and places like that. So the history here is rich. There's such a wealth of that particular period of British military history.
Who did you get in? Who was the first company to come in? Other than you guys.
That's a good question. Our storage company, I think, were the first company. So Historitor, they're based in one of the C-type hangars. So we've got A-types and C-types. And the A-types, to kind of put them into context, the A-types are about 37,000 square feet in size. So they're big. They're 9 meters to the bottom of the roof structure. So it's like a cathedral. And those are the smaller hangars. So the big ones, the C-types, are 50,000 square feet. And they are vast. They're huge. They're completely over-engineered as structures. Again, in kind of typical British fashion, we're going to build some strong buildings. And in places, the floor is 10-foot thick concrete. They're
which
vast.
when you talk to the guys from Historia, they love it because having this 10-foot deep concrete or so, it's like a big warming mat in the winter.
Yeah, it acts as a big thermal brick.
Yeah.
And so the temperature change in this, I think they've calculated that the volume of air in their hangar is 12 Olympic swimming pools worth of air. There was a time when they weren't particularly busy in the early days, and they spent a lot of time on Google, I think, kind of working out some fun facts.
Sort of things like, what's the biggest thing we could fit in here?
Yeah, exactly. They had, in the early days, they had a Route Master double-decker bus. Yeah. And they decided to put it at the far end of the hangar. And there's a little sort of viewing window where you can look into the space. Yeah. And so guests that were coming in and looking down this kind of vast space, they'd see this bus at the end. They go, wow, is that a Route Master? And they say, yeah, it's actually a half-size Route Master. And everybody believed them. No, I didn't know they made those. It's amazing. It's actually full-size and it's just really far away. They're big, big spaces.
Yeah, it's such a cool use of these crazy old buildings. And like you said, some of them are vast. Do you get some... Historic is one of the bigger ones. Do people use any of the other big ones for stuff?
Yeah. So Historic's sister hangar, the other C-types, there's 4 hangars here. And the sister hangar is our event space. So we tend to fill that with with crazy displays and try and find new and interesting uses for it. And so that's kind of during the working week, it's in use for everything from kind of testing the latest type of autonomous vehicle radar systems, or LiDAR.
Yeah.
I think it's
LiDAR?
LiDAR, that's it.
LiDAR.
Through to photography and film use. We should be sitting in the middle of the hangar.
We should. That would be
doing this podcast.
Just have it like really close, and then just one camera from the other wall with these tiny specks.
Pans out. We should be there. So during the week, it's all about film and photography and testing, and then occasionally it's used for kind of bigger projects. So Darkest Hour. Did you see that, the film about Churchill with Gary Oldman playing?
Vaguely heard of it.
So Hollywood blockbuster film, and that was part of that was filmed in the hangar. So it can act as a massive studio space. Probably, I think, what the most obscure.
I saw a McLaren launch video.
Yeah. So they fired their
600
new
LT Spider, I think.
It's the Spider.
Fooling around inside there.
So they fired that through the open hangar doors at the end. It was cool. They did some good stuff. But I was trying to think of the weirdest thing that's gone on in the hangar. It's probably the most obscure would be the blue whale that's now in the Natural History Museum in Kensington.
Okay.
So, you know, when Dippy the dinosaur went on tour,
yeah.
do you remember? It's about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. Dippy did a tour of the countryside, and they had to replace Dippy with another skeleton. And they've got this amazing blue whale, which they needed to construct an armature for the skeleton to support it, and they could hang it from the roof of the museum. And that was built here in the hangar. So we know that not only can you fit 12 Olympic swimming pools worth of air in the hangar, but you can also hang a blue whale from the roof structure.
Nice.
So it's pretty.
It's a multi-use place.
Everybody needs a hangar, clearly.
I would love to have a hangar.
It's a dangerous space, isn't it? Because you could just, when you've got that room, you can fill it easily.
Yeah, and you'd just be like, I'll just put a double-decker bus in the other end, and it doesn't look like, just fits in.
As ever, you need an excuse to get a double-decker.
Yeah, and then someone's like, oh, where do I store my jumbo jet? Like, well, you could probably put that in there as well.
all sorts. But they are amazingly versatile spaces, and Historia have filled it with 300 cars. And that in that hangar, I think the C-types are about 11 metres to the bottom of the roof structure. So there's a lot of space. So they could go up. Another level. Another level. Literally.
I think 2 floors.
Yeah.
Is the way.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, once you filled it, obviously.
It's full.
Yeah.
We need more space.
Before you came here and joined this project, you were involved. Were you in the car industry at all?
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough to kind of grown up in this industry and to have, I suppose, from a really early age, have kind of had the opportunity to mess around with old cars. And I learned to drive in a 1935 Austin 7, which is fairly rare these days. Not many people have that experience. And really lucky in the sense that it was a car which my dad had learned to drive in when he was younger, like age 9.
Nice.
And it kind of just sat around in a shed, in a barn for most of his life. And then when I was young enough to be interested in cars, I kind of hassled him until he said, "Okay, well let's get this running. Come on, off you go." And so I learned to change gear in an Austin 7, aged 10.
Is that a sort of conventional gearbox clutch setup?
So it's standard pedal layout, and I think that had a 4-speed box. That doesn't mean it goes fast. I think the max speed was about 40 miles an hour. But it taught you all you needed to know about cars, because it's a really, really simple little 4-cylinder engine.
Yeah.
Single carb, and the clutch travel was about 1 inch. So you're either on or off. So that taught you about your clutch control and how to think about gear changes. I had a synchromesh gearbox, so you didn't have to double declutch in that.
Oh, okay.
But you had to rev match. Right. Otherwise, your gear changes would take about a week.
This is a lot to learn for you.
Yeah. So it's a kind of a baptism of fire, really, isn't it? And I quickly found that you could take the seats out and take the roof off, and it went a bit faster.
Take the extra seats out.
The extra seats. That weight you wanted to get out of it, and it was nothing special. It was just a little mid-1930s kind of family runabout. The kind of the car for the people, the original Mini.
Have you still got that car?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, have I seen that car? Probably. Maybe.
I don't know if you have. It's a really sweet little. It's called the Pearl Cabriolet. Just so again, it's very. You can imagine it in the 30s. You can imagine the adverts. It's a little steel-bodied 2-door car with 4 seats and a roof which is a bit like imagine a vintage pram. And that's what the roof looks like. And they're just really lovely little things. And it was meant for tootling around, a cheap form of transport for the 1930s. And we've had it for so long because it hasn't ever really been worth any money. There's no point selling it.
Yeah, exactly.
You might as well just keep it in the shed. And so Dad learned to drive on it. I learned to drive on it.
So your kid's going to learn to drive on it?
Yeah, I'd hope so. So my nieces have driven it, and it's
That's
kind of
quite
there.
fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of a family kind of hack, I guess. And the tyres it's on 19-inch wire wheels, and the tyres are about 3.5 inches wide. Actually.
Nice.
So on a wet grass field.
Yeah, a little bit lively.
Yeah, it's quite fun. But it's a very long-winded way of answering your question, which I kind of was really lucky to grow up in a family where cars were important. And
old cars, definitely by my standard.
Definitely old cars. And so I think the newest car I grew up with would have been about 1955, I think.
And you're not 100 years old.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I grew up with this amazing love for classic cars, particularly pre-war cars. And again, that's such a niche area for people in the car world today.
It's super niche. Well, it's not, but it is.
It isn't, and it is in a strange way. And you kind of, unless you're sort of born into the pre-war car world, it's not the sort of natural part of the car world to kind of jump into.
The natural sort of progression, I guess.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of young people who love pre-war cars, and they're in that kind of world where they go off and compete and drive these things around. But it's, as you say, it's not the natural progression.
I still haven't quite got it. I do quite like if I come to say a Sunday scramble, so one of your big weekend type events, I quite like getting someone, either Pip or someone like yourself, who has knowledge of the older stuff, to have a little wander around, and then you can point at stuff and go like, here's a fun fact about this car. Like, that was the fastest car on the planet at its time. And you're like, what the hell? And then you're like, it did 140 miles an hour. You're like, what? Someone did how fast in that?
But it's always in something with, no seatbelts, no roll bars, no windscreen most of the time. That's why it's so much fun. It's proper driving. If you want to have the most kind of visceral, back to basics driving experience, drive a pre-war car. And as I say, preferably one with tyres that are 3.5 inches wide. That's how you're going to learn about handling. And the crazy thing about a lot of these cars, particularly things like Vauxhalls and Bentleys, a lot of people don't know what Vauxhall did in the pre-war days.
Yes, I think most people are going, Vauxhalls and Bentleys. What do you mean, Vauxhalls and Bentleys?
Vauxhalls
are they
and
in
Bentleys,
the same?
They were in the same category back then. So Vauxhall were the first company to guarantee the 100-mile-an-hour sports car. And they built this thing called a 3098 in period, which is a big, thumping 4.5-litre, essentially open touring car. They're either 4 litre or 4.5 litre, enough litres. And they make the hair on the back of your neck stand up with the noise they make, and they hair around everywhere. They're a fast car. And I think people have this sort of common preconception that pre-war cars are slow and boring.
Yeah.
They're not. They're quick. They just don't stop. they have no brakes. And so, if you want to learn about this kind of how to drive a car, how to handle something like that, go and have a pre-war experience, and I guarantee you'll come back. You'll come back.
I need to have a go in something old.
You've got to do it. And it's once you get into these old smokers from that time, it's very, very hard to the bug never leaves you.
It's hard to come back.
And so I'm very lucky to have grown up in that world and had that experience. And now, having sort of worked through, I worked for a dealer for a bit in London before being here. I worked for an auction house for a bit as well, and kind of built up my knowledge of the car world, and heard about this project at Bicester Heritage very early on through some mutual friends in the car world, and just couldn't And it was so exciting. I could not be involved in it. And was very lucky to be here in the early days and to be offered a job here. And that, for me, we mentioned the slippery slope earlier of car ownership. That was the slippery slope. And, I'd had fun in Austin Sevens and plenty of classic cars, but being here and surrounded by the knowledge and the businesses and the people that are based here, it's just infectious.
Yeah, totally.
You can't not be excited about old cars when you're here. It's intravenous.
Yeah, 100%. And you go into all these different funky little places here, whether it's someone that's making vintage radiators or, all these sorts of stuff. And then you go into the dealers, and actually, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure most of the dealers here seem to have like really nice stuff.
There's a good mix. So
bit of a mix.
There's 5 dealers on site, and they all kind of specialize in their own area. And so that's either a particular mark or period of cars or use. So it could be racing. And so if you look at dealers like Robert Glover or Pendine, Rob Glover is all about pre-war cars. He gets the odd bit of sort of post-war stuff in, the odd kind of classic racing car. But he's a young guy selling pre-war cars to really interesting people who are looking for that experience. And he's got this wonderful showroom, kind of really smart, modern sales environment. But the cars in there are they're bonkers. At the moment, he's got a 1920s Becquet Delage, it's called, in there, which was a 1920s Grand Prix race car, sort of single, 1.5-seater, not quite single-seater. And the body looks like firework.
Is it red?
No, it's blue. It's got a sort of pointy boat tail to it, aerodynamic body for the 20s. And that thing, in period, had a V12 fitted in the 20s, mid-20s, which was way, way too complicated for what it was. And it raced with that V12. And then somebody thought, well, okay, that's too complicated. We're going to make something, make it a bit easier.
Yeah.
So they stuck a Hispano-Suiza V8 from an aeroplane in it on stub exhausts. And so when that thing fires up, it's spitting flames. It's bonkers. And again, the wheels are, the tires are about 5 inches, I think, maybe a little bit more. But that thing, it's fast and faster. That's all it does. And spits flames, and it's cool. So Rob's doing some really cool stuff in his business. And then you look at others like Pendine and Sports Purpose. Sports Purpose, I think they're Porsche specialists. So they've got some lovely they've got an RS in there at the moment, through to I think a really original 356 racing car.
I walk into these places, and until you learn a little bit more about the cars or whatever, you're like, oh, that looks nice. And then annoyingly, when you start talking to the people and they start telling you, whether it's like Robert or someone like that, because I walk into his place and I'm like, yeah, what is all this rubbish old stuff? He's like, yeah, it's just some more rubbish old stuff. But that, they put a V8 in something that shouldn't have had a V8 in it, and it shoots flames and it weighs 200 kilos and goes 200 miles an hour and it's got no seatbelts. You're like, okay, that's pretty legit.
Absolutely. So that car in particular, because of the way its gearbox is set up, when you select reverse, you get 4 speeds in reverse as well. So technically it can go, it can do over 100
in reverse
and in reverse.
That's got to be some sort of record.
Do you want to try it?
Absolutely not. But there's crazier people than me that might.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. But there's some really cool stuff around the place.
And it is that thing of older cars. They have all these stories. And you hear about how they were used back in the day and the modifications that they have. And it's not someone's just put a loud exhaust on because they want to sit on Sloane Street. It's like they were rallying and blah, 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 blah. And actually they want more flow and they want to go faster.
I think you've got to look at older cars, particularly in the pre-war world, as like going to the tailors or having a suit made. You went to go and order the car that you wanted to have, and it depended on what you were doing. So you might have been going down Sloane Street, in your 1930 Bentley. But at the same time, on the weekends, you wanted to go and do a bit of rallying, or you wanted to smash it across Europe to get to the Mille Miglia or whatever it was. And so they were tools. And if the body that you bought the car with didn't suit you, you'd rebody it.
Yeah, that's a crazy concept.
Yeah, but no one really does it so much now, and it's seen as devaluing the car if you do it now. But in the time and
that was just the thing back then.
Yeah, it's just how you did it. And so I was researching a car the other day, which won. It was actually a Speed 6 Bentley, which won at Le Mans, and had a sort of open tourer style. You know, if you picture a vintage racing Bentley,
it looked like that.
It looked like that, and sort of the famous look that everybody wants to replicate. And the guy who owned it after the racing, after it retired, rebodied it to become a kind of his rakish touring car. And he extended the scuttle and the bonnet, so you have this amazing long bonnet, and it's 2 seats, and you're pretty much sitting on the back axle.
Wow.
And you've got about 10 foot of Bentley in front of you. You know, the nose would arrive a day before you did. And that's just what they did. And he put in these really deep, sort of beautiful tool chests in the side, and painted his racing colours on a flag on the side of it and stuff. And it was just tailor-made. No other car in the world had that body. And,
truly unique, yeah.
It is unique.
And back in the day, like the equivalent of an F1 car, whatever, you could just buy that and just drive it around.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a lot of the older generation and the pre-war thing, they're intrinsically linked, because for a long time those cars weren't worth anything. And for 10 quid, you could pick up a 4.5 litre Bentley.
Yeah.
You know, sort of 50s and 60s and 70s. These cars were not worth anything. Nobody wanted them. So there's amazing stories about guys, buying a Phantom 2 Rolls and using it as their tow car to tow a Grand Prix Sunbeam to race meets on weekends.
Yeah.
And that happened, genuinely. And, if the Rolls broke down, you just shove it in the yard and buy another one, because they were so cheap. And it was an amazing world which created, I think, incredible drivers, unbelievable stories, insane events, many of which still exist. And as you say, it's all about the stories, it's all about the people. It's about where that dent came from in whichever race, where the car was found. And there's a car that lives here, which belongs to my CEO, Dan. And that car was sold new to Eastern Europe before the war. And it was effectively pinched from the owners by the Nazis when they rolled through the country there. And they used it as a staff car. And the owner happened to be, he was conscripted, and he was making his way back through Europe towards the end of the war as a soldier, and found his car abandoned by the Nazis. And so he just got in it and drove it home. And so this thing's got the most incredible story.
That is an amazing story. That's bonkers.
But what's the likelihood of just casually finding your car, the one that was stolen from your home, taken from you? It's those kind of things which I think really give those of us that work in this industry a real love for what we do. It's very different to other areas, other jobs. I might be wrong, but I don't think you can really fall in love with insurance and banking. It depends on how you operate, I suppose. But from my perspective, this industry is so based around the tales of what happened to interesting people and interesting vehicles and times gone by, which make it so evocative.
Yeah. Why do you think those cars got so cheap, but also then started to be worth something now?
I think it was because of mass production, really.
They just made a lot of them.
Yeah, well, no. So the earlier cars were all hand-built.
Yeah.
And, very much, you're having your body tailor-made for your car, specifying this, that, and the other. They made them in limited numbers.
Yeah.
So there weren't that many around. And after the war, nothing accelerates mechanical and engineering development like war, sadly. And so after the war, we had vast factories producing aircraft and naval equipment and so on, with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so they all turned their hands to everything, whether it was making schools or prefab houses or cars or bodies for coaches and buses and things. And so those techniques created a new era where we were able to mass produce vehicles on another level and create cars for the masses. And so you suddenly found, Austin 7s, for example, were produced in, by the thousands.
Yeah.
And vast quantities. And then you reach the 60s and, people think of E-types as quite a rare car. They're not. There's loads of them. And they made thousands of them. Not quite on the same level as car manufacture today.
Yeah.
But, the advancement in mechanical engineering and production techniques allowed us to very quickly develop our cars after the war. And why would you want something pre-war that was harder to start and did 4 miles to the gallon and generally coughed and spluttered if you didn't look after it, when you could have a Mini, which worked every time and had a heater and a roof and space. And it was cheaper. So I think for a long, long time, there were a lot of other options which were easier, cheaper, warmer,
better,
safer.
Exactly,
and so it was only the diehard enthusiast that realised, what these things were worth. And now they've gone up in value, of course, because of the stories, but also because they only made a few of them. And over the 80 or 100 years that they've been around, few of them managed to survive.
Yeah, and then loads of the companies have sort of disappeared, haven't they? Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll be walking around, and you'll be like, "Oh, that's a Alvis." What the hell's an Alvis?
Absolutely, but Alvis made some stunning cars, and right the way up until 50s, 60s, they were still making some lovely, lovely kit. But nowadays, you never hear of them. In the 30s, 20s, and 30s, they were pioneering the use of aluminium. So I might be wrong, probably be corrected, but Alvis stands for Alvis, Al for aluminium.
Oh, right.
Is it the chemical symbol for aluminium?
Al, yeah.
Al, and then vis is Latin for strength.
Okay.
So they were pioneering these kind of strong, lightweight engines in period, and they were well known for it. Good things.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's all these companies that come and go, and then you compare. But like nowadays, do you find because of, let's say, this place, there is more interest? Do you feel like you've sort of cultivated more interest in older cars by making them more accessible, I guess?
Definitely. So we're on a mission here to bring young blood into this industry because, well, it's something we excel at here. We're lucky enough to be in the UK where we are essentially the centre of particularly the classic motoring world. And this is where the skills are, this is where the majority of the cars are, and the events. And if you want to go and have fun, this is the place to do it. And the industry itself is worth over 5.5 billion to the UK's economy, which is a very little known fact. It's worth more than the entire whiskey industry.
Really?
Yeah. So, and it's kind of a sleeper industry. No one really sort of expects that.
Yeah.
And it's something that we've been good at for so long, and particularly with manufacturers like Bentley and Rolls, they generated these amazing apprenticeship schemes. And we suddenly went through a period where they fell off a cliff. And for a while it was seen as a bad thing almost to do an apprenticeship. You want to go to university instead, which is daft because they're both. Yeah. If they're not as good as each other, then an apprenticeship is almost better because you're learning
actual skills
which are infinitely transferable and applicable globally.
Yeah.
You can build an engine in any language, can't you?
Yeah.
And so we're now reviving this in this country, and apprenticeships are back on the map, not just in the car industry. And here we've helped co-found 2 apprenticeship schemes in the last 3 years, and they've gone from 8 to 100 apprentices in that time.
That's good going.
And that's now forecasting to double. So the interest is definitely there. And I think through the creation of this place, this destination, and our own events, it's an exciting place to be. And hopefully we're encouraging young people to get into this world. And it's an incredibly rewarding industry to be a part of. And fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Huge fun.
It's just fun. Like, cars are fun.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. And, I think with the evolution of the apprenticeship schemes, we'll see a lot more of that. And to try and assist that, we've started a charity here called Starter Motor, which exists for the sole purpose of putting young people in the driving seat. So if you're finding it hard to get into the classic car world because of ownership or the cost of buying a car, the cost of insurance, that sort of thing, Starter Motor is there solely to get people into cars and get them past all those problems and to let them learn how to experience these things, to go and go hill climbing in a Ford Model A or something ridiculous, or go trialing, go mud plugging up muddy hillsides, and learn how to break these cars as well as fix them, which for the apprentices is hugely important. It's not just a classroom-based apprenticeship. You need to learn how to blow your engine up.
Oh, well, that's fun. Like, sign me up.
We've all done it. And it's a bit of a kind of a ritual, I suppose, isn't it? You know, if you get into this world and as a young driver, something's inevitably going to go wrong at some point.
And that's when you really learn how to fix stuff. Now, I'm not very good at fixing stuff in cars and things, but mainly because I have modern vehicles and stuff doesn't really go wrong. But the things I have learned how to do has been when something has gone wrong, then I learn about that item, and then you learn a little bit more about cars or whatever. You're like, I need to change the exhaust. Oh, I reckon I can do that, unbolt this, plug that in, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Change brakes and all that sort of thing. So you just need to break more stuff and you learn a lot more.
Absolutely. And I think it's usually a case of needs must. So you're usually somewhere probably in the rain, cold and wet when something goes wrong.
And duct tape.
Yeah, and that's when you learn how to change a wheel. Or in my case, I'd never replaced a fuel pump before.
Right.
Until I broke down in the tunnel which goes from the docks in Dublin to the ring road of Dublin.
Nice.
And breaking down in that tunnel sort of late at night with lorries kind of going past you, and they set off all these sirens when a car breaks down in there, and it gets pretty hectic. And so I'd never changed a fuel pump before until then.
But you had a spare fuel pump?
Had a spare fuel pump. We were going on a rally across Ireland, and I'd done that event a few times before, and various things had gone wrong, and I thought, actually, I probably better bring a spare one. And luckily, I had one, and that was on the way to the event. That was before we even got to the start line. The car broke down, and we got towed to a hotel just outside Dublin, and spent the next 3 hours, kind of late into the night, fueled by Guinness, underneath the car, taking bits off it, and we fixed it. And the next day we drove to the start line, and then did 3.5 days of rallying around Ireland and drove back.
Brilliant.
To
That's got to be
again.
Immensely satisfying.
Yeah, it's hugely satisfying.
I don't necessarily want to go on a road trip and have to fix something, but I can see how it adds to the memories.
Yeah,
100%.
Absolutely.
Do you do a lot
of with a skill?
Rallies in old cars now?
I have done, yeah. Mostly endurance rallying. So
what's endurance?
Endurance rallying is long distance
Okay.
rallying, kind of over a number of days, and endurance probably because you're in cars that are not suitable for doing that kind of distance. But it's an experience. It's a hell of an event to do these things, and you generally go as part of a team. So it's you and a navigator, or you can switch and share. And we've done them all over the place. So there's some really famous events like this, like the Mille Miglia, which used to be a race. It's now a sort of a timed rally over most of Italy. And then there are other events sort of UK based, like the 1,000 Mile Trial or Flying Scotsman, which are pre-war. And you get really tested. You're doing 3 days solid driving in a car which was built 80 years ago. And you have to overcome all sorts of problems. The car might break down.
Yeah.
You're going to fall out with your navigator at some point, or driver, whichever way around. You're going to get lost. You're going to end up in some pretty interesting places. But at the end of the day, you usually make it to the bar or whatever hotel you're staying in, and you are there with however many other cars are doing this event, and the camaraderie is incredible. And everybody's in different things, and you just, no matter what walk of life you're from, what your budget is, whether you're in £1 million worth of, whatever it is, pre-war Bentley that has some amazing history, or whether you're in 15 grand's worth of Austin 7, you've got common ground, and these incredible cars break down barriers. It's great fun.
It does. The more I do road trips, and the more I do road trips in different cars, the no frill, like the no problems, do it in something modern that's never going to break. Like, let's say you've got an RS6 or something, fast, whatever, is good. But you definitely don't get as many memories as doing it in something that's older. Like doing it something in my old 911, which is by no means old by your standards. But like stuff stops working, or the windscreen wipers aren't perfect. You drove that to
the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, exactly.
How cool is that?
Like that, hands down, was the best driving experience I've had. And part of it is the fact that you think it may not make it. And actually, it was unbelievably reliable, no problems.
I think that's it, though. That's the part which some people find hard to comprehend. If you get in the RS6, you're going to get there.
Yeah, fact.
You will reach the Arctic Circle. But where's the fun in that? Okay, you're going to get there. You'll have more time when you get there. Fine. But getting into a car and leaving your house in London and thinking, I might not make it, that's exciting, isn't it? And that gives you a bit more adventure. And sadly, if it does break down, you're so off the path. Then you're going to have an experience that you would never have imagined. You'd have, and good or bad.
Totally.
And you come back from that, with this amazing story. And the only old Porsche, I say old, it's sort of older. I had a 993 for a bit. The only one I owned, I took on my first road trip. I took it to the west coast of Scotland.
Nice.
And ended up on Jura. So you're kind of 2 ferries away from the mainland, and it decided to break down on Jura.
Oh, nice.
And so the clutch cylinder just let go and no hydraulic pressure. And so I could, if I let the car warm up for about an hour, I could just about get a third. And so I drove all the way across Jura to the first ferry and managed to get on and off that before the car got too cold to select a gear. And then got onto the second ferry from Isla back to the mainland. And that's quite a long, that's an hour-long ferry, which was enough for the car to cool down.
Oh, right.
And I was the first car on, so I then had to hold everybody up on the ferry whilst I let the car warm up enough so I could select a gear to get off the ferry. And it then took me 18 and a half hours to get back here on, a relay of trucks. And that was a bit, that was not so good.
That
was
not
not
fun
fun.
bit.
But it's a story. And I got back and it's fine. And
yeah, and you've got that memory.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a fine line.
It made me appreciate the drive up there even more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Have you done that Brighton one? That was this
yesterday?
This weekend?
Yeah. So I do that regularly. And actually, this year was the first year I haven't done it in about 8 or 9 years. And it felt quite strange not doing it. And my dad did it, and a mutual friend of ours, Decky, did it. And it's just, I think if you want to go to the extreme of...
Because that's like really old, isn't it?
It's really old. If you want to go to the extreme of old car events, that's it. And it's incredible. And it's real kind of bucket list stuff. And so the newest car is 1904.
That's the newest car?
The newest car is 1904.
Oh, wow.
And so you're going from London to Brighton, 60 miles, in cars which are over 100 years old. And it's proper turn of the century. The car has just been invented, and we're going to try and get to somewhere 60 miles away, which is not, in today's money, that's nothing. You can do that in no time at all. And your Audi, you get in, 60 miles is done. But you do it in these things, and it's just, again, you never know if you're going to get there to start off with. And you will meet the world's most interesting people, and you will learn things about motoring which you never knew before. And for example, the car that we do it in is a Panhard Lavassa. So again, another make which you don't hear of anymore. Panhard, I think it's a French company. I think they went out of business in the 50s or 60s. And I could be completely wrong on that, but nevertheless, they were one of the French marques which kind of was so far ahead of their time at the turn of the century. And so if you look at our car, it's 1903. It's got clutch, brake, accelerator in the normal layout. It's got 4 forward speeds. It's got 4 cylinders. It makes 12 horsepower. Can seat 5 people.
Oh.
It's got 4 wheels. That helps. It's chain driven. And it's pretty much a modern car. And somewhere between 1903 and now, kind of everybody went off-piste and created some crazy stuff. And even Bentley created cars with the accelerator in the middle.
Yeah.
Which,
Why did they do that?
I think it was to do with heel and towing. So you have more control.
Okay.
I think.
That's vaguely what I've heard.
I think. So when you're double declutching, which you have to, you get much better control on and off the brake in that, I think. But, if you forget that and...
Hit the wrong pedal.
It's quite scary. So, for the Panhard in 1903, they effectively built a modern car, which is extraordinary. And to all intents and purposes...
What speed will this beast go?
It'll do 30 miles an hour.
And do you go...
Maybe 35 downhill with a stiff breeze behind you.
Do you go on a motorway?
For the Brighton Run, you have to do... There's a small section of dual carriageway or motorway where you literally just go on and off. And that's just outside Brighton. That's a bit hairy.
I can.
But luckily, it's downhill, so you are going a little bit faster than normal. But that stretch of the motorway, everyone's aware of the fact that old cars are coming onto the motorway.
Because I opened up Google Maps on Sunday, I guess it was, and it just suddenly there was this like dotted line, and it said Brighton. It's all set out and marked up.
Yeah.
Because didn't someone died?
Yeah, it's really horrible. There's a so sad. It's, these are old cars, and they can be tricky to drive. And as with all motoring events, things can happen, things can go wrong. And in this instance, it's an absolute tragedy in that the couple who had the accident just got the wrong turn and ended up way off route and went onto a section of motorway. And it was totally sad. And it's quite uncommon for things like that to happen.
So were they just driving down the motorway, but like 10 miles an hour or whatever?
No, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it's dreadfully sad.
Yeah.
And as I say, in any motorsport, I say motorsport, it can happen. And we've all got to be careful. And some of these old cars are just bonkers things to drive anyway, and you have to be.
I think it's crazy. Really, I always find this sort of question where it's all very well people going, yeah, but like back in the day they used to race these cars. And you go, yeah, but back in the day we didn't know what safety was. Like we didn't have carbon tubs and like proper safety equipment. Yeah. And to now go and drive these cars knowing the safety stuff that exists now is different to driving them back in the day because that was the latest thing, sort of thing. Do you find that plays on your mind a little bit, or not really?
It definitely does. And I think particularly with the London Brighton, when you're driving these cars, you have to completely reset what you think you know about safety and driving. And particularly with these things, you have to plan your gear changes from about 200 yards away from the traffic lights, because you've got to think, are those lights going to change on me? Lights change quite quickly, particularly in London. Yeah. And in a modern car, that's no problem. In these cars, you've got to go down through the gears. In our car, you have to brake on the transmission with the foot pedal, and on the transmission with the foot pedal, and then you brake on the chains. It's chain driven with the handbrake. Right. Or vice versa. I can't remember which way around it is. And so it's a bit like playing the organ. You're trying to change gear, you're trying to change down, double declutching, and you're having to brake.
And slow down.
With two different brakes at the same time, and slow down. So you have to be so careful, speeding up and slowing down these things. And you've got to reprogram the way you drive. And that is perfectly safe. But what you can't expect and what you can't sort of rely on is how traffic's going to react to you. Yeah. And I think a lot of modern drivers have no idea about double declutching or the fact that you're having to do all this stuff to try and slow your car down. You're not going that fast anyway, so they'll see you and get out of the way. But if they cut you up at the last minute, that's an issue you can't stop. And they don't expect that at all. They've got 2 tons of veteran car up their back. So it's things like that you've just got to be really careful about. And arguably it makes you a much safer driver because you are looking so far ahead and you're planning your turn, the lights, the junctions, whatever happens, way before you would in a modern car. And then you get back in your modern car and you still are aware of these things totally, aren't you? Yeah. I found that with driving on snow and ice and stuff like that. Definitely. Same thing. Like you're aware, one, that the brakes may just not work. Full stop. May not just work. So every now and then check that they work, that sort of thing. And then also like, if that car stops, where have I got to go? Exactly. Yeah. Which bush am I going to aim for? Or which snowdrift am I going to go into? Which of the less of the 2 evils can I aim for? Yeah. It's funny when there's on the way into work for me, there's a particular corner on the roads near here, which is not a particularly sharp corner, but it's got a big ditch on one side of it. And if you have a few dry days, hot days of weather, that road is going to get a lot of rubber on it from people going around a sharp corner. And one day of rain, it's going to be like ice. But nobody seems to get their head around that. I don't think people drive for the conditions. No, not at all. And so inevitably, every week there's a car in the ditch. And everybody's fine because it's not fast. But nobody realizes that it's going to be like ice. Well, that concept of rubber on a road, or I only really came across it first time on a racetrack when you get rubber on the racing line, and it's just basically sheet ice. Yeah. And the more I drive
fast on a track in the wet, for example, the more I treat driving on the road with, I'm more careful for sure. But the number of people, you'll be sitting on a motorway and you might be going, it's like torrential rain. And let's say when I had my M2, for example, I'd probably drive quite slowly, like 50 or something, because it's not great traction.
Yeah.
And it's just puddles everywhere. And then someone will go past you at like 90, just like on the phone. And you can see them just going through all these puddles. And they may be okay. But I reckon pretty much that car is just shitting itself the entire time. Like the dash is just lighting up. And they're like, the steering feels a bit numb. Like, just because your wheels are not on the ground.
It's mad, isn't it? And one day they all come unstuck. And if they do, I don't want to be anywhere near them.
Yeah, exactly. When they try and brake and realise, oh.
Yeah, it is just a matter of time if that's how you drive. Isn't it? It's a lottery, and one day you're going to win.
Yeah,
it's kind of mad. But that's the joy of being in old cars, and that you really have to think about what you're doing. And that's part of the fun.
And generally at lower speeds.
Yeah,
I think probably one of my favourite pictures that I've ever seen. This is going to sound a little bit morbid, but is you in a car. It was on one of these trials.
Oh yeah.
Were you in an Alvis or something? I can't remember.
No, I was in an Austin 7.
In an Austin 7
yeah.
with Dexter. And this picture is this car 90 degrees. So like fully on its side, but moving sideways, with the two of them still in the seat before presumably half a second later, the whole thing rolling and people flying everywhere.
We came unstuck. It looks like we're auditioning for Russ Swift's mini team, but we were. Yeah, it was entirely my fault actually. I can't say we. We were. Decky and I were on the last day, penultimate day of a rally, and on a section known as one of the sort of special test sections, and we were trying to get around a go-kart track in a pre-war car as quickly as possible. We were doing quite well. We were in this tiny little 750cc two-seater open Austin 7, and we just about hit the 1,000-mile mark in 6 days, I think, of this rally, and we were getting great guns, and we were top of our class and fending off 4.5 litre Bentleys and the big boys in proper cars. We were in a car which was completely unsuitable for what we were doing. But nevertheless, I think on this event we'd just driven to Edinburgh from London, and we were on our way back down again. Yeah. And we were on our second lap of this track, and I went around a corner, which on the first lap the back end stepped out, and we slid round quite nicely. And it was a hot summer's day, and sadly the second time round we were carrying a bit too much speed into the corner, and the tyres, again 3.5 inches wide, just dug in, and somehow this photo was taken of us.
Unbelievable photo.
Of us, as you say, exactly that, 45 degrees. I'm determined and looking out of the windscreen.
If I keep looking over there, that's where I'm going to go.
Get there. Whereas I think Decky is already diving for cover by that point and working out where his parachute is. We rolled, and we were bloody lucky not.
Because you were pretty much fine, weren't you?
We had a lot of road rash. And, so all of our injuries were kind of the same as someone coming off the motorbike. We were doing about 30 miles an hour, I think. And except we had no helmets, no leathers. And so I took quite a lot of skin off my arms, and poor Decky took quite a bit of skin off his chin and cheeks. But everything else was okay, and we totaled the car. and very quickly ended up in hospital. Where the ambulance crew, who were fantastic, gave me a bit of a dressing down, saying that I was an idiot for not wearing a seatbelt. And I said, well, actually, this is a pre-war car with no seatbelts, no roof, and no roll bars or anything like that. So we were thrown out of the car quite a long way, which is exactly what you want to happen in that instance. Yeah. And so I said to them, actually, if I was wearing a seatbelt, I probably wouldn't have a head by now. So I'm quite lucky that I wasn't. And I'd always wondered if I'd be thrown out of that car if anything went wrong. And
apparently you were.
I can safely say that you are. Yeah, it works. It has a sort of inbuilt ejector seat. Yeah, not to be repeated. I think
lesson learned.
lesson learned, a lot of people who I've spoken to have also done similar things. Have said, you only have to do it once.
I imagine, yeah.
It's true.
Doing it once.
It's true. I definitely don't need to do that again. But you learn a lot. We rebuilt the car, and it's still in use, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a pocket rocket.
Oh, good. And because it has small tyres and not a lot of power and whatever, you were only going 30 so miles an hour.
Yeah, that one could do 70, which was...
But not around a corner.
Not around a corner. Well, it depends.
Yeah.
But it was quite a capable little thing.
Yeah.
And a testament to the change in mindset in car building from pre-war to post-war. So pre-war, everyone was about bigger engines. The bigger the engine, the faster it will go. And there's a great saying, which is there's no replacement for displacement.
Yeah. Classic American line.
Classic, exactly. And it's true for that period. That's where you get the crazy cars like sort of 14-litre Bugattis the Napier Bentley with a 24-litre W12 engine and stuff. They're just incredible. But then after the war, you've got a 750cc 4-cylinder Austin 7, which, side valve, it could do 70 miles an hour. Mine wasn't a particularly hot one. Some of them are really, really quick. The single-seaters are even better. But my Austin 7 days are done, I think. Been there.
So we're on this site. There's a whole bunch of businesses, 40-something businesses on the site. What's the plans going forward? I know there's quite big plans for the site.
Yeah,
because you've got
good
whatever it is, 350 acres.
Good question.
Space.
We're now 444 acres. So big site.
444 acres, yeah.
Big site. And we're almost at the end of our sort of planned restoration works and sort of phased delivery of Bicester Heritage. And we're at capacity at the moment, so we're building another 8 buildings here, which are pretty much all pre-let.
And are they going to look like the rest?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a building behind you, actually, which is the home of Mercedes AMG F1's sort of historic collection, what they call their historic collection. Which is
it's like 2 years old.
Yeah, exactly. A bit different to my version of historic. So their building is kind of the blueprint. It's got sort of metal-clad sides to it and brick end gables, and it's one of the historic buildings here. Yeah. It's called the Field Force Motor Transport Shed. Great name. And so we've used that as our kind of our blueprint for the future. And the new builds are same style, metal clads, historic colour scheme, but much bigger. So 5 to 10,000 square foot in space. And they'll look obviously new, sort of sharper lines.
Yeah.
They're very sympathetic to the rest of the site. So we're in terms of the historic importance of where we're sitting. This, I think I mentioned earlier, it's the best preserved Second World War RAF bomber station to survive. So that's a big deal. 80% of the buildings here are Grade 2 listed. It's a conservation area, and we have 11 areas of scheduled ancient monuments. So
what is a scheduled ancient monument?
Well, they are. It's sort of a level above listed buildings.
Right, okay.
Where Stonehenge, for example, is a scheduled ancient monument. And they are monuments which have to be maintained and preserved in the condition in which they were found when they were scheduled.
Okay.
So that means for our buildings here, most of them are kind of trenches, bunkers, anti-aircraft gun posts, seagull trenches, mushroom pillboxes, all sorts of weird and wonderful, wacky defensive structures, which the RAF built, and we have to kind of preserve them as they are at the moment. So historically, this place is unique. It's one of one. There isn't anything else like this in the world. And so everything we've done so far has been very sensitive and thought through in terms of the restoration and reactivation of the space. Very much like you would restore a car with race history and battle scars. And if it's won at Le Mans, you don't want to just give it a fresh paint job, do you?
Or clean it.
Exactly, or clean it, indeed. Well, that's another argument entirely. Ron Dennis had a different view on that, I think. Yeah. But it's amazing to see these buildings come back to life, and we're custodians of this site. So anything we do going forward has to be thought through and sympathetic, as I say. So we're expanding heritage, but we've also launched a brand called Bicester Motion, which is all about the sort of present and future of motoring. If heritage is about the past, then we're looking towards the present and future with motion. And the aim is to create the UK's first automotive resort. So this is a community of like-minded businesses, like we have at Heritage, but focused on modern engineering, EV, racing, skills, modern business enterprise, and really addressing the same sort of problem that we've addressed for heritage, but for those current industries. So bringing together like-minded business to create a tech zone, but also an experience zone. So somewhere where, as an enthusiast, you can go check into our hotel and spend a long weekend doing something different every day. And that might be some driver training on one of a few tracks to, sort of handling circuits, right the way through to full brand experience, so kind of going to see what your favorite manufacturer is doing next. Spending a bit of time in an area which we're calling the Bicester Reserve at the moment, so sort of country park. The name Motion has been very carefully chosen for that reason, because it's not just about cars and aviation here anymore. It's about lifestyle. And so that's a bit of cycling, health and well-being, and fitness, and effectively the opportunity to bring your family and enjoy this space together. And in addition to that, we're planning a bit of future tech as well. So modern engineering units for businesses, whether they're in Formula E or EV development and autonomous vehicles, that sort of thing. So
that's cool.
It's a really exciting concept to create a space where you can fully immerse yourself in the great automotive culture that we have in this country. Yeah. And it's not being done anywhere else. And we see it as an opportunity to identify with the modern markets. So people are buying cars and using cars in very different ways now. And so whether that's configuring your car online before you press the order button, you don't necessarily need to pop into the showroom. And if you do go to the showroom, you're usually going to pick it up now. And also in terms of usage, going forward, do people actually own their car? Do they, is it the kind of zip car thing, or is it shared vehicle ownership? All of these areas are new and they're developing. And thanks to digital space, that's a possibility. And so we want to be the hub where you go to experience that and work out how EV is going to change your world, how new battery technology is going to totally change the way we all drive, that sort of thing. That's a whole other debate.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting to be at the centre of that. And so we've launched Motion this year. And heritage remains and becomes a component part, if you like, of a much bigger site. We've got full planning permission now to build our hotel, so 344 rooms. It's cool. It's a big hotel, and that changes everything because it's we now have space for people to stay here and spend time.
And people to host stuff, I imagine, like conference type things.
Yeah, exactly.
Not conference, but experience stuff.
Yeah. But we're lucky because our location, being on the edge of Bicester here, we're an hour and a half from half of the UK's population. Yeah, which is astonishing. You couldn't be in a better place geographically.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very easy for a lot of people to get to here.
Yeah, so we're lucky. So that Motion is our plan for the future. And we've just launched our new website for that. So there's way more online for people that want to read up on it and see where we're going. But it's an opportunity for us to develop our events as well. So we've got a lot of historic events on site here, which are huge fun. But we can now look
huge now.
They're big. In fact, when we got going, we started the Sunday Scramble, as it was known then. It's now just the Scramble. We started the Scrambles as our open day event, and the opportunity for people to come and see what we're doing here, see the businesses, and see some of these amazing old cars. And I think the first one, about 80 cars turned up.
Yeah,
a couple of hundred people.
That was great.
And it's tiny. I thought, this is amazing. This is incredible. All these people want to come and see what we're doing. And the next event came around and it doubled in size, and then it doubled again. And we thought, right, we're going to have to start putting in some infrastructure here and traffic management and catering and so on. So we charged everyone £5 for a ticket, and it doubled in size again. And it kept going until this January, we held our first open day scramble of the year, and we were expecting 5,000 people, and 8,500 people bought tickets. It's just extraordinary. And I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier on before we started the podcast, and that it's the opportunity for those events nationally has exploded, and we see it as the new membership, the new kind of club activity for people. And it's the Scrambles are now, a lot of people call them their club event. Yeah. And it's a space to go and hang out and meet your friends, but also to see and meet new people who have got different types of cars to your own. So it's no longer the kind of the single mark event, just the whatever, the Mercedes event or the Bristol event or the Porsche event.
Yeah, I love it. Come up here, arrange to meet like a couple of friends or whatever, we hang out, go for a wander around, have a coffee, have a bacon sandwich, peruse loads of little workshops, see some interesting stuff, see some stuff that you're like, what on earth is that? That is awful. Some stuff that's amazing. And then just like cruise off home and whatever. But it's a really cool venue for it.
And I think we looked at the structure of a lot of other car events and thought they're quite regimented. Yeah. And I think for a long time people have been used to being told where to park, which area they can park in, you know, depending on the size of their engine or the date of the car.
Wallet.
Wallet. Yeah, exactly. All this stuff which separates people and segregates the fact that we all love cars and we all want to chat to each other about them. So the scrambles were the chance to knock down all those barriers and just say, park wherever you want. Choose your own backdrop. Everyone goes looking for the kind of the Instagram, the photographic backdrop to where they identify with these events. And for a while, people couldn't get the hang of it. We had a load of funny conversations with people saying, where do I park? And I said, well, anywhere. No, but where do I park? No, anywhere. And it took some time for that kind of relaxed, laid back structure to take hold. And since then, the popularity has boomed, and we're so delighted to be able to share this site with enthusiasts. And it's we've always had this sort of unofficial motto, which is, if you love it, we love it too. And it's very true. And you get the most amazing spread of vehicles. Particularly for the scrambles, it's all pre-1990, so everything up to 1990 is welcome within the display area at the site. And you end up with multi-million-pound Ferraris, 250 short wheelbase, parked next to an incredibly rare Citroen 2CV or something, which is just a complete other end of the...
And it's great when you're walking around, because you'll just stick your head around the corner and you'll be like, oh, wow. Or, as I think was not the last one, but the one before Mercedes had declared that they were there, and they I think they were keeping it all hush, and then suddenly they open the doors, and you're like, oh, there's like Lewis's car.
It's incredible. And their presence here is very low profile. Yeah. And occasionally they do bring a car out for an event, and it's such a surprise. We love that. We don't in advance of the events, we don't shout about what's going on a huge amount, because again, that sort of adds to the structure. Of course we want people to know what they can expect to see, but
it's nice to find things that you didn't know were going to be there.
Precisely. And it's a new way of engaging with an event where you can go and explore the place for yourself. And there's no barriers, you must have a ticket to get to this area, there's no kind of people telling you where you shouldn't go. It's all open and inclusive, and you explore. And if a building's open and a specialist is open welcoming you in, go and stick your head in, go and chat to them, go and see what they're up to. And they might have some amazing kit in that building. And you just explore. There's about 50 buildings here and structures, so you can really spend a good few hours pottering around.
Totally, and the first time you come here, and probably the fifth time you come here, you'll get completely lost. Yeah. It's a bit like going to IKEA. You're like, how do I get out of here?
I've been here before. How do I do this? True, yes. What's amazing about this site is that the RAF very cleverly designed the layout here. So in the 20s, they literally wrote a book on how to build airfields of this type. Okay. Because we're British and that's what we do. Inevitably, our enemies probably got their hands on it during the war and thought, this is excellent. We know what everything looks like. But nevertheless, they laid this site out to basically be a sort of trident formation, 3 avenues. Yeah. And so if you always walk to the end of an avenue, you can kind of work out where you're going from there. And the buildings are laid out between these avenues in a sort of totally asymmetric village-like feel, which had 2 purposes. So if you were based here and you were, all likelihood you were going to give your life for your country, you wanted to live somewhere which felt nice, and the RAF wanted to provide somewhere that made the guys based here and learning to fly happy. So it was like an English village. And you've got loads of sort of village greens and grass areas and trees. And, and it's beautiful. And the other aspect was a bit more functional, in that having an asymmetric layout of the site made it much harder to hit from the air if you were trying to attack the place. Yeah. So you can just sort of strafe a line of buildings. It was
It was all a bit wonky.
Higgledy-piggledy. But it's very clever, really. We've got the RAF to thank for leaving us with such a
it's such a cool place. And I'm looking forward to the progress in years to come, for sure.
Yeah, watch this space.
Okay, I normally wrap up these podcasts with 5 questions.
Okay.
So I'm just going to hit you with them. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think I'm very lucky to have done a huge number of events and to have driven all over Europe in old bangers. And my wife and I have done a lot of these events together. And we took the kind of the experiences that we've had on these events and created, for our wedding day, we created a wedding rally. So for those who left the church and driving between the church and the reception.
Yep.
Did you do it? You did it? Good man. So we created a route book and handed it to guests who were interested in doing it. And it was amazing. I think it was quite a good uptake, wasn't it?
It was really good. It was the first time I've actually seen this style of route book. Now, it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
But there's all these different symbols for like turn left at the
tulips, they're called.
Church or whatever. And
it's the most kind of obvious form of navigation.
Yeah.
And we drew a tulip rally book for the wedding and handed it out to guests as they left the church. And thankfully, everybody made it to the reception.
Yeah.
There were no casualties. No one went missing. So we did all right. But for me, that's my most memorable event because it was kind of everything we've loved doing with cars.
Yeah.
Rolled into a pretty
friends,
cool
cars,
day.
obviously your wedding.
Yeah, exactly that.
Good
It was
times.
all your best friends in their favourite cars as well. So that's cool.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. Right. 5-car garage.
Oh,
Unlimited
gosh.
value.
Unlimited value.
And it has to fit into your lifestyle. That's about it.
Ooh, okay. I think you've got to go on usage. So
Daily.
I'm going to go with an FF.
Nice. Not GTC 4 Lusso?
Tempting. There's something about the FFs. I prefer the look of them.
Yeah.
Lusso is probably a better car, but as a daily,
Yeah.
V12, obviously. Yeah, I think that would
Top
do.
tick.
Second daily.
Yeah.
So when the FF fails to start.
Yeah. Okay. Once a week.
battery. Yeah, once. Yeah. Defender.
Right.
Old Defender.
Old Defender.
Everybody needs a Land Rover. And so I think for me, we often say this in the office, they're kind of a modern vintage car.
Yeah. Totally.
You pile into a corner not really knowing whether you're going to get out the other side of it. But it doesn't matter because if you go through the hedge, you just keep going.
You just keep going.
Yeah, you're fine. So Defender's got to be in there. That's controversial, I think.
There's a
what
little
else?
bit. I mean, they are awful, but they are cool.
What else? What else have we got? Kind of.
Do you have some sort of sports car?
I think
sort of track car?
so. I would go. I'd have to have a pre-war vintage car. In there.
Okay.
I'd probably say a 4.5 litre Bentley.
Right.
Maybe a 4.5 litre. So for those that don't know the pre-war cars, a 3 litre Bentley was the earlier type of car in the 20s, and they had a really nice light chassis. But they were slightly underpowered for what they were. Lovely cars, very pretty. But you can stick a slightly later 4.5 litre engine in there, and then you're flying. A great thing. And that as a rally weapon, you can do everything with those cars. You can race them, you can rally them, hill climb, trial, go to the shops. Everything.
Oh, so a 3.4 is kind of cooler than a 4 because it's a bigger engine and a lightweight body.
So you'd upset the purists because it's a bit of a hot rod.
Yeah.
But if you go back to that conversation of tailoring a car to what you want, a 3.4.5 is a pretty cool thing. So I'd love a 3.4.5. So what have we got? We've got daily.
You've got an FF
Defender. 3.4.5.
3.4.5. How much is a 3.4.5 these days?
It depends. I mean, some of them have got a bit of history nowadays and they're fetching good prices, but you're looking at anywhere from about sort of 300,000 to 400, 450, depending on what they are and what
so you've got 2 slots.
2 slots. Got to have a veteran car in there.
Right.
So because you've got to do the London to Brighton.
Okay, of course,
I'd have to keep our family car. So
right.
I'm in the extraordinarily lucky position of being able to drive my great-grandfather's car.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is unheard of these days. Very, very, very few families have ever kept a car that long. And so he bought it new in 1903.
That's amazing.
Drove it back from Paris to Bristol, and he got caught by the gendarme on the way. They tried to do him for speeding, and as they were trying to book him, the heavens opened and this torrential rainstorm blew in, and the police dived for cover, and he drove off. and I think he felt guilty.
And that was that.
Felt guilty for the rest of his life. But so we've still got this car, which it was last painted in 1904. And so it's kind of crazy history. And
that's cool.
Yeah, I'd have to keep that.
So you got one more slot.
One more slot.
Any sort of, not interested in like a modern-ish, and I say modern-ish, I mean like 60s forwards sports car?
That's a good question. I think I'd have to. I'd be betraying my heritage. Ancestors would be turning in their graves if I didn't have a Bristol.
Oh, okay.
And so Bristol was a family company for us, and they've kind of descended into obscurity slightly now. It's one of those sort of British brands which no longer exists. And for a long time, they made some pretty quirky models, and we owned the company up until about 1975, or thereabouts, kind of mid 70s, and sold it. And so from about 1946, 7 up until then, they made some beautiful cars. But I'm heavily biased, so I would say
biased,
that. But and so I'd have a Bristol, and there's one car out there which is kind of my dream, and that's they built a series of Le Mans cars,
right?
And they went racing in 53, 54 and 55, and they did really well. So they raced in their class, 2 litres. They came first, second and third in their class.
Nice.
Just one of the Le Mans cars remains.
Yeah.
And it's a bit, in its design, it's typically 1950s with a big fin on the back of it.
Yeah.
Quite aerodynamic in its look and feel. It's kind of, it's not as pretty as a D-Type, extremely famous.
Yeah.
That sort of sharky shape with the fin. Not as pretty as a D-Type, a bit more functional in its look and feel. But yeah, there's one left, and it's in an amazing private collection in this country. And occasionally it sees the light of day, and it goes to events and things.
Yeah.
But that, with full 2-litre race engine in it, that would be my final one.
Cool.
So there you go, pretty quirky selection, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that crossing over with many other podcasts.
We've had an FF.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Okay, if you can only drive one car for the rest of your life, and you're allowed like a £500 banger to put rubbish in or whatever.
That's a bloody good question. I'd be that 4.5 Bentley.
Nice.
Yeah, vintage car every day.
Smoke around that and every day.
Every day.
Fair enough.
It's definitely doable.
Yeah, I suppose you probably get rinsed if you turn up in a modern car around here.
Yeah. There's a bit of that. It's presuming that the fuel bill will be paid.
Oh, yeah, it's unlimited budget. So
okay, we're fine.
Unlimited fuel card.
Very good.
Okay. If someone gave you 50 grand, what's the best value car for let's say under 50 grand that you can think of?
That's an amazing question. What would you say?
Okay. So I answered this question earlier today because I was thinking about it. For me, I think it really depends on which category, but a first gen M2, so 2017, like my car-ish, you could get one of those for like 31, 32 now, 20,000 miles for like 15,000 miles. Like do everything, cool looking car, drive it on track, great road trip car, just kind of does everything. I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah. I think it's pretty cool. I think you could...
There's loads of stuff.
There's loads of stuff. I mean, kind of any 911.
Any 911.
Any 911. It's just something that you can use every day. You can take it on the track if you want. You can have a bit of fun.
I don't know whether because at the moment, everything, I don't know about the classic car world, but I'm sure, anything that's not the super special stuff has all taken a big hit in the last 6 months, really. And 911s particularly, I haven't really looked recently, but let's say a 993 used to cost nothing, and now they don't cost nothing. But I don't know whether they've come back down again because everyone's gone, actually, it's not the RS or the blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, the Porsche market went a bit bonkers for a while, didn't it? But I think there's been a bit of a market adjustment.
Yeah.
But as you say, the good stuff always sells.
But yeah, like some sort of C2S.
Yeah. Yeah, if you went for a 993, sub 50 grand, you could have something which is pretty, pre-water cooled, a bit more manual. You could have a lot of fun.
Cool car, looks cool.
Looks cool. You can go anywhere in it, all over the
Probably
country.
won't break down too much.
No. Yeah, they're bloody reliable.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, next question. What, in your opinion, is the most undervalued car at the moment?
That is an incredible question. Undervalued.
What you just look at and go like, that's too cheap.
I had this conversation with someone the other day, and it was one of those conversations where we came up with two really good ideas, both completely gone out of my mind.
One of the classic ones people goes, and then they just insert whatever car they own right now.
Yeah,
like that car, that particular VIN number.
Which is soon to be on eBay.
yeah, exactly.
Undervalued cars. The geeky answer being into the kind of the pre-war world would be Vauxhall 1398s. So we're talking, what's our price limit here?
No, it's just generally.
Just anything. So they're rare, they're capable, they're every bit as good as a Bentley.
Is this the 100 mile an hour one?
This is, first guaranteed 100 mile an hour sports car. And Vauxhall now, everyone thinks of Vauxhalls as being sort of the small daily. These cars in period were proper out and out, balls to the wall cars. They were fun things. And the other similar vintage cars from that period are sort of way up towards 500,000.
Yeah.
And these cars are still probably a couple 100,000 less.
Okay.
So if you're looking at that kind of level,
yeah,
they are undervalued. I think they're such beautiful looking things.
Yeah.
I think it's
I totally get that.
That's a good
Half
one.
the votes of Vauxhall.
Yeah. And they're obviously a bit more expensive. But yeah, undervalued. I'm trying to think of sub 50 grand undervalued car.
Oh no, but that's a different question. But,
Yeah.
But no, okay. So you think the Vauxhall
1398.
1398.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think they're cool things.
They are quite cool.
We need to find some footage
First
of
100 mile an hour car. That's like a legit thing.
Yeah. First guaranteed. Yeah.
Final question.
Okay.
What is the most interesting car for you at the moment? So what do you find yourself like Googling or Auto Trader, or I don't know what you classic guys look at, some sort of vintage magazines or something to find Classic Driver, to find old cars?
Wow. You are speaking to someone who works in an office where the car and classic search is almost, there's a tab permanently open on our screens. There's all sorts of things. So this week, because of the London to Brighton run, we've all been kind of looking at what
could you buy to do the run?
What can you buy to do the run? Or arguably what kind of cars sort of after 1905, from 1904 to 10, that era they don't sell for a huge amount because they're not eligible for the Brighton run. So you can get these weird and wacky, crazy machines. So yeah, that's kind of the most recent search. What's the most regular search?
Just like right now, where you're like,
I quite fancy so Bristol in the 60s changed from sort of 2-litre 6-cylinder engines to 5.2-litre V8s, Chrysler V8s.
Okay.
Which they kind of stuck some silencers on and toned down. They were sort of civilized things to burble around London in. And they're cool. They're really nice sort of long distance touring cars. And I'm quite tempted by one of those. 1968 410 with a 5.2 Chrysler V8 and then straight through pipes.
Nice.
Which is completely against the grain of what they wanted them to be, but.
Yeah, but that's cool.
Why not? For a bit.
Why not?
For a bit. Until you go deaf and then you just don't have to worry about it.
Brilliant.
There we go.
Thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome, Sam. Pleasure.
Yeah.
It's hopefully being a little bit different from the kind of the modern cars.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. It's been good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Oh, cheers.